If you're showing up on a construction job site tomorrow for the first time, it will help you to have a couple of tricks, a few definitions, a move you can bust on somebody, like this. String, one end, gonna fasten it in place any way you want. I'm gonna do that again because you're not gonna believe what happens next. Ready? Boom. You can cut a string with your bare hands. So go down to the box store right now, get a roll of string and practice that move so that you can really blow them away tomorrow when somebody needs a string cut. So my goal here is to give you at least a passing acquaintance with some of the tools that you might have to get out of the trailer, that you might have to set up, that you might have to use, some of the processes somebody might ask you to do part of, so at least you won't look like such a total greenie. Part 2 in this series is going to be some of the mindsets and some of the behaviors that you're going to need to have in order to sort of keep your job, and number 2, set yourself apart as somebody who deserves promotion. So some of the tools, some of the tricks. Hammer, nail. There's more to hammering than you might think. Think about this. It needs to be a fluid motion, and the outcome is that you're throwing the hammerhead at the work, watching the point of impact, and letting the hammer do the work. So I'm going to drive a nail. You start it. You just let it flip down there. All right, you're going to practice that. Now I'm backing up to the string that you just saw me cut. So stretching between 2 nails. It's harder when it's so short because a short string doesn't have as much stretch. A long string will stretch a long ways. But you just make your loop, twist it about 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 times, drop it over that nail. Then you pull with one hand and pull back with the other. And that's how you hold it. Look at that. See that? Check out the videos we've got. We've done a couple like this because it's important. And then to let it go, you're not trying to untie the knot, and your boss might be watching this. You just reverse the process. You straighten out your twists, and it comes. I'm going to do that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe. One more, one less. Stretch with one hand, take up the slack with the other. Boom. Release. If that's all you can do with a string, it'll be enough to get their attention. So let's say you got to pull some nails, and you don't have your hammer. Don't make that mistake. And the boss says, well, use mine then. And he hands you his highly prized Hart 25-ounce framer. This is a piece of cedar, so it'll come right out. But I'm just going to use this as an example. If you're pulling nails and they pull hard like this, it puts big strain on the head of where the handle joins the head. And by about the 10th one, if they're tough nails, you could easily break that handle right off, thereby suddenly needing another job. Let's go down to the other side. Once again, not a great example because this is soft wood, but if you're pulling a bunch of nails and they're pulling hard, you turn the handle the other way. You see that? And you have the advantage of all that leverage right there, and you're not going to break the head off, thereby, not getting screamed at. So tape measure. You better take a tape measure to work. And we have lots of videos on tape measures and tape measure tricks, but let's just say that you've got a Stanley 25-foot or 30-foot or a Fat Max. It will remain rigid for a certain distance, usually about 7 feet, unless it's a Fat Max, right? And so if you think about it, you don't have to run up the ladder to hook your tape. You can just reach out there and hook it. And when I say hook it, I mean drop the end of the hook over what it is you're measuring from, and don't get freaked out because that hook slips. It's slipping precisely the distance that equals the thickness of the hook. So an outside measurement is accurate and an inside measurement is accurate. Now, if you're a metric guy going to work in America, you better learn to read feet and inches and fractions of an inch. You probably know this. Each inch on these tapes is divided into 16 pieces. That's the little bitty ones. 2/16 is an eighth. 2/8 is a quarter. 2/4 is a half. ad infinitum. You don't freak out. The intermediate mark at half an inch is longer. The 1/4 inch mark, halfway between, is shorter. 1/8 is shorter. 1/16 is shorter. Don't get panicky. Count the marks. Use your head. Now here's the other thing. On most construction sites, at least the commercial sort of production construction sites, you don't call out 92 inches. Now you might, but when you're calling measurements over a distance and when you're working with people that are not drywallers, never mind drywallers, but in framing, you call it out in feet and inches. 7'8" plus 4'2". You see how much easier the math is? That's 11'10". You can add the feet, you can add the inches, and it works equally well in subtraction. So pay attention to whether they want their measurements in feet and inches or just inches and fractions. One more thing I'll mention before we head into tools, and this is somewhere between practical and useful and just plain silly. You can get familiar with measurements that are based on your own body. Like a span, a hand span, on me, that's 9 inches. I just know that's 9 inches. And the thickness of the thumb is 1 inch. And the length of my boot is 12 inches. And the distance between my fingertips is 6 feet. Now these things can be useful, but if somebody says, cut me a 6-foot brace, I don't have a tape, boom. Now you know what 6 feet is. And the time will come when you can just look and know and cut. But until that time gets here, you need every advantage you can get. So a couple of comments about skill saws in case they trust you to touch a skill saw tomorrow, which I doubt. Skill saws are fantastic. They also are blood hungry. They love to get blood splattered up on the table and underneath the guard. Don't let it be yours. We've got several videos. In fact, one of the first videos we made that actually did good was about skill saw pro tips. I recommend you watch it, especially the introduction. But the bottom line, the first thing about safety is you grab that like you've got the hold of the head of a snake that wants to bite you. You're trying to squeeze the life out of your skill saw if you can before it cuts one of your arteries. And if you are always squeezing that just about as hard as you can, it's not going to hurt you. The second thing is, you never block up with the guard, but you don't know if the job you're going on tomorrow is a job where they block the guards up or not. And if it is, 2 things. Slow down and be careful. And the second thing is start looking for another job. Because even if there is a moment when somebody has to block the guard up, there's never a day that they shouldn't pull the pin out and let it drop back down, and don't let them tell you anything different. Skill saws are often used in conjunction with speed squares. Maybe you cannot just see a square line and cut it, but if you have, or somebody gives you a speed square, you've got a built-in square gauge. Now, did you notice the end of that skill saw cut? I got off the trigger as the saw was emerging from the cut, so it wasn't spinning when I set it down. That's an acquired taste and an acquired skill. But if you have it on your mind tomorrow, somebody watching you from a distance might think, that kid might be teachable. Okay, so nobody is going to ask you to pick up a nail gun tomorrow and nail anything together. Probably. But if they ask you to get the nail gun out of the job shack and bring it out onto the job, when you walk in there and you find a nail gun, this is a nail gun, by the way, start looking around for the oil, the gun oil. It's going to be in some sort of a bottle that, with a little... And when you go out there, if they ask you if you oiled that gun, put 2 or 3 or 4 drops right down the same hole that the air goes into, because the air moving through the tool carries the oil where it needs to be. If you do that, you're going to make some points. You're going to be recognized as somebody who pays attention. And if they want you to hook up the air hose, here's something you may not know. Air fittings, air chucks. This is an old-fashioned sort. This is a universal. In both cases, you're going to be frustrated if you don't realize that collar slides back to unlock. Here, let's do it like this. To unlock the chuck. See that? Because if you just walk up to that and shove it, they're going to have to walk over there in disgust and say, don't you know how to hook up an air tool, kid? Boom, boom. Now, A universal will receive it just by pushing it in. That's handy, but they almost always leak. That doesn't matter. What does matter is that you know that the female fitting on the end of the hose will push directly onto the male fitting on the end of the gun. By the way, that illustrates a binary of life. Don't let anybody tell you it's not binary. By the way, if they ask you to roll out the hoses, or the cords for that matter, I can't tell you how they put them away the night before, but I can tell you this: be careful and slow down, because however much extra time it takes you to roll it out carefully is not near as much as it'll take you if you just throw it on the ground and start pulling indiscriminately, and pretty soon the whole... Don't do that. Pick up the cord, pick up the hose, and use your brain to figure out what is the way that I can get this into a straight line and make no knots and create no disruption. Pay attention to that. Levels, whiskey stick, spirit level. They are a little counterintuitive. If you've not read a level before, you can sort of psych yourself out trying to decide, especially on plumb, which is up and down, level is horizontal, plumb is up and down. Which way does that need to move? When they say, grab that level and check that door jamb, okay. If they say, grab that level and check that sill, horizontal, it's easier. You move the end up that is in the direction you want the bubble to move. You see that? The bubble is crowding the line on my left, your right. You want it to move that way. That means that end of the bubble needs to come up. Now, not very much. Okay? Now, for plumb, what way does it go? It goes that way. You see that moving it that way moves the bubble where you want it to be. So the only thing, I don't have a rule of thumb. I don't have a cute little couplet that will sort of guide you out of the woods with a level and which way they've got to go. But pay attention. You're smart. In just about a second, you'll go, oh, I get it. But don't open your mouth until you have some idea that you actually get it. Now, one more thing on this, especially if you're plumbing and lining walls where the wall is going to always be where it is when it's nailed off. If they trust you to read the level, and they won't, but you need to find out what their allowable tolerance is. How good is good enough? And if nobody tells you, then you assume that it has to be perfect. And it doesn't matter how long it takes for them to adjust and readjust and adjust and readjust. You don't tell them it's good until it actually is very good. So framing squares. There's a world of information on here that you're not going to need tomorrow. I included part of it in a video that we did earlier, a lot earlier. But for tomorrow, probably all you're going to need to know is if they ask for a framing square or a steel square or a carpenter square, this is what they're asking for. Don't throw it down when you're done. Lean it up against something. Don't put it on the floor where it can be stepped on. If it's been laying out in the sun, it's going to be hot. And if something needs to be squared up and you don't happen to have a framing square, like the end of that table, 3, 4, 5 will do it. What that means is 3 feet this way, 4 feet this way, and 5 feet connecting those two marks makes a 90. There's a whole bunch more to say about that. But after you've been at work for about a week and you realize that some of the guys know how and some of the guys don't, you're going to want to become one of the guys that knows how. Carpenter's pencil. If you're going to be a carpenter's helper tomorrow, bring one to the job and have some idea how to sharpen it. Now, it's not rocket science. Utility knife, I like to break the rule about ever cutting towards yourself and sharpen a carpenter's pencil by bracing it against my thumb and carefully scribing away the wood. Let's do that on a factory end. First cut's wide, get into where you can see the lead. Next cut, get into where you can see the lead. Same thing. You're not going to cut yourself because it's down below the pencil. And then if you're framing, that's good enough. If you're doing a more detailed and accurate kind of work, bring it to some sort of a sharp point, would you? And sharpen both ends while you're at it. So if you break off one you can spin it right around and keep working and not have to waste the time of getting your knife out and sharpening it again. So we've done a couple videos on chalk lines. I'm just going to boil this down a little bit. If the journeyman wants you to hold the end of the chalk line and he sticks it out towards you and wants you to grab that string, don't just grab the string, because then when he's walking away, if the chalk line hangs up, it pulls out of your fingers and the chalk line hits the ground and knocks off the chalk and everybody's unhappy. So if somebody sticks a chalk line out to you expecting you to grab it and wrap it around your finger. Now it's not coming off unless your finger does. Next item, red, blue, black. 2 of these will get you into trouble. The red and the black are indelible. That means once they're on, they're not coming off. The blue goes on pretty well, and it will largely come off. So be a little careful. It's almost like carrying around a can of paint when you take a chalk line and walk across a job. You got to pay attention. So you need to know the difference between a drill, cordless drill, and an impact driver, because they may ask you for one or they may ask you for the other. A drill motor. This is a drill motor. This is the drill or drill bit. Variable speed, 2 speeds, useful for drilling. They were the early answer to putting screws in by hand, that you could put a screw tip in there and run screws in. They have these clutches now that will adjust how much torque goes on to the screw tip. But for drilling, it's just drilling, because we have impact drivers. Let me show you what an impact driver does compared to a drill. Hear that clicking? It's an interrupted rotation with impact. Now this probably will illustrate it even better. See that? See how controllable that is? They're really nice. Impact driver, drill motor. Now there's another thing, that you need to know when to get off of the trigger on either a drill driver or a drill, because you can strip it. Look at that, that's not holding anything anymore because it stripped out the wood. It will also strip out the mechanical connection. So part of using a drill driver is knowing when to go ahead and when to back up. Now there's one other thing. Let me pull that out of there. It's going to be hot. If you've got a lot of screws to put in, you'll please them if you go through and start the screws, perhaps nicely in a line. Oh yes, that is still hot. And then you can go through and put them in all at once. That's way quicker than turning those screws, putting them on the drill and putting them in place, because we haven't even talked about turning the screws or turning the nails with your left hand while you're running them in or nailing them with your right. Okay, so a couple things about drills. They send you to the trailer to get drills, drill motors. Probably it's going to be cordless. If you want to tighten up a bit in a cordless, keyless chuck, you simply put the drill into the chuck, and then, you might put this on the low speed and hold the outside of that and feather that down. And that's about as tight as you're going to get it. And then to take it out, hit reverse, hold that. If you are going to put in a little bitty drill bit, you don't wind it down by hand. You put it in there, you hold it with your index finger and your thumb, and then you carefully pull that trigger, and it is winding the chuck down until it finally makes contact. It's the same thing. And then to take it out, and if your next bit's going to be a bigger one, you open it up, put in your next bit, put it in go ahead. There you go. So the alternative to this, which is growing increasingly rare, is a corded drill motor with a keyed chuck. Bigger drill bits, more torque. It's just got to have a key so you can get it truly tight. Now you can get it close to the right bit size using the same method, but to get it really tight, you run it down and then take the key that's usually either lost or dangling on the cord. You put it into that hole, you engage the gears, and you twist it righty-tighty. And that is way tighter than you can get it with a keyless chuck. So if you're drilling, anyway, you'll figure that out. But this is a drill motor, this is a keyed chuck, this is a cordless drill motor with a keyless chuck. You'll figure it out. So this is one of the last things before we head outside, and that is, you're familiar with drill motors. Now it's drills, the drill bits. They come in a wide variety of types and purposes and materials. Machinist style bits in a drill decks. You know, most kits are in 1/16 of an inch increments. Most of them have several broken down here in the bottom. These are a Forstner bit. They've got a needle type of a point, so you can get a very specific location in wood and a flat bottom hole. Spade bits, these are the cheapest. They're everywhere. You didn't really hurt anything if you lose or break one. They will make a hole, but they're a lot of work because you got to push every inch. Speed bore, 3 flutes. They cut like crazy. They take a lot of power because you're cutting in 3 different locations with a worm pulling you in. Speed bore. Hole saws. If you walk into the job shack and come back with these instead of a drill bit, they'll say, that's not a drill bit, that's a hole saw. And you'll say, yeah, but it makes a 5/8 hole, 3/4 inch hole. That's not what I want. There's mandrels, there's center punch, there's center bits, there's all kinds of stuff. Hole saws are cool, but they are not drill bits. And then here's an assortment of bits that I used to carry around all the time, ship augers, big and small. So pay attention. And when in doubt, ask the question. The journeyman, even if he's impatient, would rather have you ask than waste 10 minutes fumbling around in the shop for something you don't understand. So maybe the second rule on your first day is don't be afraid to ask. So we're wrapping this up with something we should have perhaps done first, and that is shovels and wheelbarrows, because it's likely that you're going to be moving dirt tomorrow. And if you're not moving dirt, you're going to be moving lumber. So check out the video about leverage and body mechanics and how to think about moving lumber efficiently. Because if you can move lumber efficiently on your first day, you're going to be a hero. Well, you'll feel like a hero, but you might be treated like something other than a hero, depending on your job site. But shoveling. Now this is not real friendly gravel for shoveling, but you might not have friendly gravel. This is open 1. It's clean 1 inch rock. And so it doesn't love to shovel. But you can push the shovel in and lift the shovel up. I mean, you can even go so far as to push it in with your foot and lift the shovel up. Or you can use the shovel speed trick, where you use your thigh as a fulcrum, the shovel handle as a lever. You see that? Lifting the shovel is happening by bending my legs. Now, I almost made a mistake in the placement of the wheelbarrow because I situated it to where this leg is a little low. And as the load gets up higher, you see how easy it is for that to overbalance? Pay some attention to how you situate your wheelbarrow, or be prepared to be screamed at. Let me throw a little more in. Now this is a lot of fun, but that's enough to illustrate that part of using a wheelbarrow is loading it, and part of using a wheelbarrow is moving it successfully. If your wheelbarrow is full, and this one's not full, you pay attention to whether it's weight forward or weight backward. You have your feet, you got to brace yourself, because if this was full of concrete especially, you're going to realize, oh, that's heavy. And the last thing you want to do is tip over a wheelbarrow load of concrete. So you kind of keep your knees bent, you're using your arms to initiate the movement. You turn carefully, and you're focusing on the front of the wheelbarrow. You're not stargazing out where you're going, because if you lose track of where the center of gravity is, and you've got, oh, I don't know, 4 or 5 cubic feet of concrete in there, and once it starts, there's no stopping it. See that? That's how you get the load out. You tip it up on its nose and you shake it. Anyway, not one bit of this is rocket science. And not one bit of this is something that you're going to know about on the first day if you haven't watched somebody else do it once or twice. And now you have. In the Essential Craftsman Academy, that's our group of friends that gets together twice a month. It's a live Zoom meeting. You come to that meeting, you can ask me questions, you can ask all of us questions. If you're part of that academy, we have curated inside the academy all of our nuts and bolts, construction skills, technical videos, all in one spot. So you can sit down and watch those back to back to back and not get pulled down the YouTube rabbit hole of constructing Solomon's Temple or anything like that. I mean, you can stay on task, and you can watch almost everything in sort of mainstream residential construction happen right before your eyes. Besides that, you can talk to like-minded people who are further down life's road in construction than you are and ask them your questions and get their advice. And then the last thing, whatever I've left out, for those of you who have got time and grade, who have paid your dues, who know what happens on your first day at work, put it in the comments, will you? When I have presence of mind enough to think about it, I love to solicit your input in the comments, because it adds up to a lot of really great knowledge that really sort of runs way past whatever it is I happen to be communicating in the video. So thank you for that. And thank you for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.